right, so superpowers you wish you could have. There's some really, really good ones. There's others where I feel like something's being revealed about you that you don't know. Like one person said to be able to, for my farts to smell like cotton candy, which I'm like, I mean, sure, but if you feel like it's because you can't control your flatulence and so you're hoping for some, it could actually be a medical problem. If it's not, then there's just, I think, maybe issues with your expectations out of life. A lot of people said flight, teleportation, to go up to a guy I have a crush on and tell him I'm in trouble because I like him. Sure, breathe underwater, which actually would be pretty wicked. One of the better ones I saw, I mean, like, again, teach their own, but like, in my opinion, one of the better ones was to be able to absorb everyone else's power. That's a good one. That's a really good one. And my second favorite was to be able to watch Nacho Libre constantly. And I actually think that's a really good superpower because that's a great movie. I think it's one of the best comedies. Anyways, flying or shape-shifting, hypnosis. You know there's a student when you're like, just to be able to have as many tacos as I want. And that's definitely a student. And so more power to you. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, I have, like I told you many times, that I don't always try to talk to them, but I got 3 kids. They always have, they're thinking of what superpowers they want. It's one of those things where it's like, I watch some of these movies, whether it's like superhero movies or whatever, and I'm thinking, what would I want? Or someone wins the lotto, and I'm like, oh man, imagine what I would do with that money. There's always a sense of envy and wanting to be or do something else. And here's the thing, when it comes to jealousy and envy is one of those emotions that pop up that no matter who you are, there's a certain time in your life, maybe even just in your day, where you just sense this overwhelming emotion of, I wish I had, I wish I was. And when I was actually processing through the whole emotion of jealousy in this series, I actually was taken back by how much there's actually ideas and verses, and the Bible talks about this idea of Jesus and jealousy and envy. Well, Jesus a lot, but I mix up my words, jealousy and envy. And what's interesting is there is this whole book called Exodus. If you've never read the Bible, you're not familiar with it, right at the beginning of the Bible, there's Genesis, there's Exodus. And it really recounts the story of these Jewish people, these Israelites, these people of God coming out of slavery. And God speaks to the spokesperson Moses and gives them this idea of what it's like to be human, because they've been in slavery for so long. It's all they've known for generations. And he gives them this specific list of 10, what we call 10 commandments. They're called the Decalogue. They're 10 things to abide by. And they're kind of separated into 2 parts. There's like our ideas about God and our ideas about how to treat one another. And right in there, in these 10 things that really comes down from heaven, struck on a stone, for us to pay attention to, is this one right here. You must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, so just watch it. If you're jealous of someone's ox or donkey, be careful, all right? Or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. I mean, right in these 10 things, listen, these are things that you shall not do or you should do. Right in there is this major component about don't be jealous of what someone else has that you don't have. And I realized, man, this is actually super important, because here's the thing, we all get jealous. And I think there's a sense where we all are jealous at some point or envious of something. But it gets bad when we begin looking at someone else and we get angry because of what they have, or we feel a sense of superiority over someone else because of what we have. And I think it's super important, because if you were to actually unfold what jealousy is and does and envy, when it kind of has its way, is it actually begins to dehumanize you and another person. When you are jealous or envious to a strong degree about what someone has or where someone is, you begin to actually think of their value based on what they have instead of actually who they are. You begin seeing them through that lens, and it's a bit dehumanizing. It can become a lot dehumanizing. Or you begin to view yourself through what you have or what you don't have, which is dehumanizing to you. And here's the thing, throughout Scripture, The Bible's always moving us towards community, towards relationship. And the thing is that jealousy breaks vulnerability, but vulnerability is absolutely necessary for any good relationship or community. And when we're jealous and envious of one another, you can't have really good community. You can't have healthy community. You can't have this idea of who you are and who the other person is, because we see them through the lens of what they have, what they don't have, and vice versa. And the job of a Christian is really this, is to understand who God made you to be, that you're made in the image of God with a high degree of dignity and value and worth, not based on who you are or who you're not, what you have or what you don't have, where you are, where you're not, but based on how God views you and sees you and loves you. And also to make sure that we view others that same way, and we do whatever we can to make sure that they know it and they're treated in that right way. That is biblical justice. That's the right way of doing things, to make sure that our images are intact of how we were made, created, highly valued. This is why later on in this book called James, by this guy named James, he writes this: if you favor some people over others, you're committing a sin. You're guilty of breaking the law. It changes our view of who God is as well. It goes on in Romans, this guy named Paul writes, and he says, for God does not show favoritism, which means God doesn't view you or someone else as more or less than someone else. And when we begin to see other people through the lens of what they have, ourselves through what we don't have, you can very easily begin thinking that that's how God views you. That God favors someone else over you, and it begins to mar your idea of who God is. You know, I was thinking through this, and there's like two stories that really pop up to kind of get this across. There's this one story, again, of these Israelites, these slaves. They come out of it. They literally are being led by God by like a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of smoke by day. Like, could you imagine? Being directed, like there was like a tunnel of fire or a cloud leading you every day. They complain about wanting something to eat, so you know what God does? He rains bread from heaven. But yet Moses goes away for a little bit. Like he was leading the people, and they're wondering where he's at, and they were like, oh my goodness, like we want more. And everyone else has these gods. It's all they would have known. So they got all their jewelry together. They melted it, and they made what was called this golden calf, began to worship it. They had everything they could ever want, and yet they still wanted more. And it taught me this thing about jealousy is that it actually doesn't matter how much we have. There's a sense of us that we always think we should or deserve or could have more. That's why jealousy is rampant. Or there's other story of the Israelites, they wanted a king. Every nation around them had kings. And God warned them, listen, if you get a king, this person, if they don't lead you the right way, you're going to suffer. And there's a lot of demise a part of it. And so they get what they want, and yet it doesn't turn out the way they hoped it would. Ever happen to you? Over and over again, there's this story of how this envy rots at us. Here's the thing, we all get jealous. I get jealous. I still do. There's things that happen in my life or to other people's lives where I'm like, man, I wish, or, I wish I could be there. I wish I could have that. We all do it. This is why, like, every single person wants to get married, and a lot of married people are like, I wish I was single, right? Like, there's this, sometimes we get what we want and realize it's way too much. Like, none of us are happy. It's just like, I wish I had a different circumstance. Some person said it this way: the grass may be greener on the other side, but the dog could be meaner. And I think often we have this weird ability, this superhuman ability. If we had a superpower, it would be this, is I can find something to be jealous about. That's kind of the way we roll. There's even a reason why, like, I took a step away from social media about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. I'm on it, but I'm not on it very much. Because even myself, I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but even myself, there was like certain points where I'm like, I began seeing what other people had, or their successes and things like that. And I'm like, I didn't do any of that. But what we see in the Bible and what we see through everyday life is this, is that when we let jealousy have its way, it can wreak havoc on your spirit, wreak havoc on your personhood, it can wreak havoc on your view of other people, on your view of God, and on our relationships. Jealousy can be detrimental. And this is why we included it in our series. On the emotions that we have a hard time controlling. We start with anger, we did disappointment, now we're at jealousy, and we're closing it tonight. Here's the thing. I'm going to actually try to condense my message pretty quick, because at the end of this, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes Because I know we couldn't hit every emotion. I know we don't get to dialogue a lot, but I like to open up dialogue as much as possible. And so we're going to reserve the last 10 minutes or so to literally open Q&A. So you and a few people can spend a few minutes dialoguing about emotions, and if you've got questions, it's not because we think we have all the answers, it's because we just want to help you process as much as we can. We're humans too, we walk through it. And so me and Amanda are going to be on stage, and we're going to actually answer some of your questions to try to hit as much as we can in the last little bit. Because when we asked you what emotions are hard for you to control, there was like a huge list of emotions. Because we're one big bag of emotions. It's basically what we are as humans. But tonight, we really wanted to end the series with this idea of jealousy. The second most demanded emotion from you was jealousy. We all get jealous. But I'm a firm believer that if you let it have its way, jealousy will steal the riches from your present. So how do we deal with it? How do we walk through it? Well, I start every single one of these messages the same way. The first thing you need to do, and I gotta tell you, emotions are not something that you can just like, hey, if you put this 10-step process, you will never be jealous again. That's not the idea. We're a jealous people. I'm saying, how do we curb it so it doesn't have its way in our spirit, it doesn't have a way in the way we view other people, ourselves, and even God? How do we do that? First thing is own it. In 1 Corinthians, it's part of the New Testament. This guy named Paul, he writes it as well. He writes it to this church in this place called Corinth. And he writes this to them. You're jealous of one another and you quarrel with each other. Doesn't that prove that you're controlled by your sinful nature? He's talking about this idea of this sinful nature, this thing that's robbing you or others of the good that they were intended to have. You're living by that thing. You're stealing from yourself. You're stealing from others. That's why you're quarreling, because you're jealous. And here's the thing. Some of you just need to own that. That's okay. If you're feeling something, own your feeling. Having a feeling is not a sin. It's not a problem to be angry. It's not a sin to be disappointed. It's not even a sin in a sense to be jealous, to feel jealousy and envy. It's what you do with those emotions that really dictates what happens. Own it. And I've been saying this every week. Just be honest with it. I am jealous of this. I'm envious of that. Yeah, I know I got a good life. I know I got good things going pretty well, but I wish I had that. I wish I was there. I wish I was that person. Just own it. Like I said, as a joke, but like semi-serious, get like one of those emotional diaries, writing it down, right? You don't have to like social media it everywhere, but just like, I am jealous. I'm struggling with this right now because I wish my circumstances were different. I wish I was like that. I wish I was like this. Be honest with yourself. Own it. I honestly think this is the first part of actually working and dealing with getting healing in your life, is just be honest with it. Recognize that you get jealous. Recognize that sometimes you can be a jealous person. The second thing is this. Ask why. Same book in James, same guy says this, you want what you don't have. So you scheme and you kill. Hopefully none of you kill to get it. But you are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight and you wage war to take it away from them, yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. You got to ask certain questions. Here's the thing. Questions unmask what's actually really going on underneath. And jealousy is a bit of a surface. Jealousy is one of those things where you feel it, but there's something else going on. So I'm going to give you a series of questions to ask yourself, and I'm going to help you kind of walk through these questions, asking, why are you jealous? You got to decipher, is this purely ambition or is it jealousy? Now, there's a difference here. Some of you are like, when I see something, someone doing something for me, when I see a runner or something like that, it's inspiring and it's like, man, I want to be able to do that. That's not wrong. That's not jealousy. That's just ambition. Ambition is this. Ambition is pursuing something that's complementing who you already are and who you feel like God is forming you to be, who you're challenging yourself to be. It's a complement to it. Jealousy is when it begins to replace your identity. That if only I had that, then I would be worth it. If only I were them, then I would be better and happier with myself and with my life. Jealousy is when it actually begins to form your identity. Ambition is when it complements who you already know you are. That's the difference. Ambition, there's nothing wrong with ambition. So you got to ask yourself a question. Is it ambition or am I just being jealous? This is the missing mark. This is what I need to be who I feel like I want to be. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be sad. We all run into that. Second question, What am I actually insecure about? Jealousy often just masks our insecurities. Those places on your body, in your mind, in your circumstances, you feel like you don't measure up. Is it hiding insecurity? Are you really jealous, or are you just really insecure about who you are? See, asking questions helps you see the motive behind it and going, oh my goodness, maybe they're not the problem. Maybe they're just something that it's not connecting inside of me. I got to pay attention to that insecurity. You ask, what am I fearful about? Are you scared that you won't measure up, that you won't achieve something? Are you scared? Are you fearful? Maybe you do have something and you want to flaunt it, you want to promote it because, it's something that you got that no one has. Are you fearful that people are going to find out who you really are and that you do have some weakness? And maybe you don't have it all together, that maybe there's something that you are hiding from people. Are you fearful? Do you feel inferior to someone? Could it be just the way that you were raised, or maybe circumstances that have happened and you just feel like there's a sense of inferiority with a lot of other people, and you see yourself in this vacuum and you're just like, I am just the way I am is all I'm going to be, and everyone else has a better life than me. Listen, that is something, that is a trench that we can all fall into. Some of us are in there in longer seasons than others, but is this a question of inferiority? Maybe it's not jealousy. Maybe it's just masking your inferiority issues. And that needs to be handled. It needs to be worked through and dealt with. If you don't name it, if you don't handle it, then you can't find help. Are you hurt? Are you just a hurt person? There's a masking hurts that are going on inside of you. Are you just angry? You can go back 2 weeks ago and listen to my message on anger. And are you just angry? Are you just greedy? Ooh, that's a tough one. Do you really need it? Well, yeah. It's AirPods Pro. I need it. If I want to be pro, I need pro. Do you really need it, or are you just greedy? Do you already have you just not taken stock of what you have, and so you just think you always need more? Maybe you're just being greedy. So you're like, okay, I got to deal with it. Maybe I just don't need that. Maybe you see other people, like they're transitioning in their life, they're getting into a job they love, and maybe you've already done that, but you're like, oh, that's exciting, getting into a new city or a new position and meeting new people, and you steal from their joy because you're greedy. And you don't let people have their time in the sun, in a sense. Are you just greedy? Own it. Be honest with it. Is it becoming an idol in my life? What I mean by this is it becoming something that you're staking your life on? That if I don't get that, I won't be this. And it's related to all of this, but this is basically becomes your, in a sense, savior. It begins to direct and rule your life. That you want to do something because you want everyone to know it, and it's what's going to save you. It's what's going to make you happy. It's what's going to give you greatest joy. Listen, some of you want relationships because you think that's what's going to make you happy. I guarantee you it's not. It can actually make you more lonely. Sometimes getting what you want is exactly what you shouldn't get, and you idolize it. You think that's going to be your savior. You think that's going to be the thing that's going to make you ultimately fulfilled and happy. Listen, happiness will last as long as any other of our emotions. And it's a replacement for the joy you've been created for. It becomes an idol. It becomes a thing that you worship, you pay attention to, thing that you adore, the thing that you spend your resources and money on. And some of you, I think, are chasing this. And you idolize people that you see because you just think you're not enough and you need more. Thomas, I really don't like this discussion. Can you stop asking questions? Sure, let's move on to number 3. Do something about it. Do something. So the temptation in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. This is a really important scripture. Some of you feel really overwhelmed with temptation, really overwhelmed with what's going on in your life. And I want to encourage you. There is this resource called the Holy Spirit and God who can help move you from that. And there's things that we need to do. Listen, if you're jealous, working through it, the first thing I ask you to do is hand it over to God. Maybe you're somebody who's like, I don't follow Jesus. I don't ascribe to it. I get it. And I don't want to force you to do something you're not comfortable with. I always feel like Jesus says, come follow. He doesn't say, come believe everything. He says, come follow, come watch. And part of that is, what if you just tried giving it to God? You don't have to, but what if you just tried? If you're a Christian, you're someone who follows Jesus and you ascribe to that life, then I encourage you, hand it over to God. Hand over your greed, hand over your idols, hand over your jealousy, hand over your fear, hand over your insecurities, and begin working through it. And the second thing is tell someone about it. Maybe you need help. Maybe you need to find a counselor. Maybe you need to find a good friend you can entrust your jealousy with and your envy. And maybe be like, can you help me just get my head back on straight? Help me work through it. Find someone, tell someone about it. Work through it. Some of you need a little help. Some of you need a lot more help. The point is not how much you need. The point is, are you just going to seek it out? That's healthy, and that's good. You've heard me say this over and over again. If you're 25 years old and you've never seen a counselor, you're doing life wrong. You all have baggage. If you were raised by anything with a heartbeat, you got baggage. And I want you to work in health. And so sometimes we need to find people to help us walk through our hurts, our disappointments, our inferiority. I can't say that word very well. And I'm jealous of those who can't. No, okay, tell someone about it. Maybe step away from the things that induce those complexes. You are on this device that is wonderfully made and can connect you with any kind of information you could possibly want when you want it. Here's the problem. It also puts you face to face with other people who feel like they have something better than you. Social media, all those things, I think they're powerhouses and they can do so much good, but they're also a terrible, terrible way of allowing you to compare yourself to everyone else. They're a good way of showing you what you wish you had without having to step into their shoes and actually know the reality of those lives. It keeps you stepping into places where you don't belong. It's not your life. And that's why I think jealousy can steal the gifts and the riches of your present, because you're so concerned about someone else's present, you don't realize what you already have. Some of you need to take a break from social media. I do a challenge with some people. I say, if you want to find out what it's like, I want you to take 3 days. Just give me 3 days where you take off all your social media apps of your phone. You know, right? And I want you, 3 days, just take them all off. And I want you to do anything except write down on a check mark or something like that, where you, every single time you go to your phone to go on social media, there's actually a number of you in this room who you've allowed me to do this experiment on you. And it's hard, but one thing you realize is that jealousy, and same as social media, steals your agency. You begin realizing you can't help yourself, you can't control it, and you don't have control over your life and that part of your life anymore. And I honestly think that some of you have huge envy issues and jealousy issues and complexes because you don't have control over your social media habits. And it's perpetuating this vision of a life you wish you had, instead of understanding the richness of the life you already do. Experiment with it. Write me emails on how much you hate me for doing it. That's cool. I can take it. Try it. Whatever you do, those things that make you jealous, those relationships that keep spurring it on, maybe it's a conversation you have with friends often, but everything that's going on but not in your life, maybe you need to step away from those conversations for a little bit. Whatever you can do to step away from it. But if you really want to know how to begin processing this out of your heart, I believe that generosity is the enemy of jealousy. Because becoming generous forces you to be thankful and to recognize what you already have and realize that I want to have a life that's not concerned about what I don't have, but a life concerned about what I do have and what I can give. It forces you to do more introspection of what God has already placed in your hands, what he's placed in your life. And then go, I want to give to people who have a need that I can give to. And I say this, radical generosity goes beyond the idea of just being generous, but it's like, how can I be generous in a way that it kind of hurts me a little bit? I'm not saying irresponsibly, but saying that, man, I felt that sacrifice, but I know it's for their good. It forces you to look inside and see, what do I actually have and what can I give? Who around me can I support and help? I honestly think that generosity will be the greatest enemy to jealousy. And when you feel it firing up, is to ask yourself, what do I have that I'm thankful for? And what can I give and be thankful that I was able to give? This is why we did our event on November 3rd. $10 to help Canadian Mental Health Association. You raised over $4,000 in one night to a cause that our demographic suffers with the most. It cost you very little. You came on the same night, we entertained you, it just cost you $10, and you made a huge dent. This is why we encourage you to give, because the project doesn't exist so we can keep lights on. It exists so that we can reach the amount of young adults in our city who don't know Jesus yet. And when you give to that. But whatever it is, however you want to give, whether it's your time, your talents, your resources, give generously. When you feel it, you got to be asking yourself a question: what can I give? Not what can I take? What do I wish I had? But what do I have that I can give that continues to push the identity that God has in them and tell them, you're worth it. You're worth my time, my resources. You're worth my effort. Christianity is a relationship based on giving. Christ gave himself fully to you and I, so that there's no reason for us to boast, none reason to say I am better or worse than you. And so we can give ourselves not only to God, but to each other, because we've been given his life. Every week I've been asking you questions. With anger, it was this: I am hurting right now. How can I be kinder to myself and to others around me? Because compassion is the enemy of anger. Second one, disappointment, is who and what can I be thankful for right now? And when you're jealous, the question is this: what do I have that I'm thankful for? And what can I give away with thankfulness? Questions to reflect, to respond to. And if you're here and you've heard a lot of conversations about Jesus, maybe it's your first week, maybe it's your 10th week, maybe you're watching online, we always encourage you to start a conversation about who Jesus is and what it looks like to walk with him. We made it very simple. You get an ebook in your hand by just texting the word NEXT to 555-888. No one's going to show up at your door. No one's going to brand you. No one's going to show up with a track. It's an anonymous way for you to just start a journey of what it looks like to be a Christian. Who is Jesus? It's all it is. And it's just an easy way to take advantage of it. Here's what we want to do right now. I told you I want to condense this. If you got all this information, I'd encourage you in just the next 3 minutes. We touched on anger, disappointment, and jealousy. Maybe you got questions about tonight, questions about other weeks. Maybe you weren't here and you got other questions about emotions, or just general questions about some of these things and processing it through your life. Maybe about mental health or how to seek for help, all those things. We want to be able to do what we can in the next few minutes to help you answer some of those things. And so Amanda's going to come with me on stage. We want to give you 3 minutes, though. We're going to change things up here. And with the people around you, maybe your friends, the people you know, we put up a story on our Instagram where you can ask those questions. We're going to get to as many as we can tonight. So take 3 minutes. Go ahead. Do that now. All right. Well, some really, really good questions. Like I said, I want to be clear, just so you know, like, I know that sometimes churches have come across like they have all the answers. Neither Amanda or I have all the answers, but our passion at the project, I know Amanda's is and mine is just to, like, how can we just help you process stuff? Just through some of the learning we've done, some of the pastoral counseling that we've done, other things like that. We just want to help navigate you to the right places, help you start off. So if you don't know, this is Amanda. She's one of our pastors on staff. Some of you are in our incredible small groups. She's one that does all that. And so she's our community pastor. She also speaks here regularly, and it's something that we are increasingly really happy to have another voice, but not just another voice, but a woman's voice. Because over half of our demographic is women, and I think they don't get represented as well as they should be. And so I'm really pumped to have Amanda on staff, and I'm pumped that she's here. So we're going to dialogue about some of this stuff, about some of these questions. We're going to try to rapid fire it. We could probably have like a 20-minute discussion on just one of them. Yeah. So we're going to go through them pretty quick, give you a few things. Do you want to open up with the first question, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm just lost. There's so many.
There are a lot.
Okay.
Why do you guys have so many questions?
Emotions, I like it. Okay. Thomas, do you have any stories from your own kids on how they handle emotions? Start off light.
Start off light. Okay, this actually past weekend. So I have a 4-year-old girl, I have an 8-year-old girl, and I have an 11-year-old boy. And my 11-year-old boy probably is the emotional one, a huge,
The
right?
boy is.
The boy, yeah,
Yeah.
Joshua. I took him to go get needles, our flu shots, on yesterday night. And this was hilarious. So my middle daughter, Julia, she goes up, she gets her needle, she watches the needle go in her arm. She was like super interested. And I was like, whoa, I thought you were gonna be the problem. And my son, he got his needles and he's like, Dad, I'm not feeling very good. And I'm like, just get over it, right? And that's how I deal with my kids' emotions. And I looked at him, I'm like, actually, you're super white. I mean, he's white, but he's super white. And he had to like be laid down on the floor and getting like fluids and chocolate, while my youngest daughter is freaking out about needles. Like, she doesn't freak out, but she was like writhing and just like fighting her mom. It took 3 nurses to pin her down to get a needle.
This is a 4-year-old?
Yes, and she's not like this. And so how do I deal with my kids' emotions? I mostly just watch and laugh. And that's kind of it. And I'm just like, all right. Like, I mean, kids' emotions are like, bang, and then boom, and maybe kind of like yours. And so that's kind of what it's like dealing with those kids. That's a lighter one.
Okay. All right, let's go with why am I sad when I pee? I don't think that's real.
That's probably because you have something wrong with your kidneys and
Don't
kidney
talk
stones.
to us about that.
You're probably the same guy who texted in earlier. Your superpower would be you'd pee money. There actually could be some sort of fetish that you need to deal with. So, Kate, here's a really good one. Actually, I get this a lot. And how do you forgive yourself?
Ooh.
I heard that. Ooh. Yeah. You know, to be honest, I actually find, like, I don't know about you, but a lot of you don't give yourself a lot of grace at this age. Like, think of the amount of decisions that you have to try to make at this age. Mm-hmm. Like, who you want to spend your life with. Nope, they sucked. And, you know, what school you want to go to, and then you realize either you love it or you don't like your program. Mm-hmm. Like, you switched your degree.
I switched my mind 3 times.
Yeah,
so there's hope for all of you.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
And then, like, you know, there's just so much transition in your life that you have to understand that you're going to make mistakes. And I think the question is not so much how do I forgive myself, but it's like, how do I allow myself to make mistakes?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your journey in life is not like this. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think you have to, if you're not failing, you're probably not living. You're not risking. You're not trying life out. And this idea of, like, let's say you have a hard time forgiving yourself, I think part of that is actually a timed process. You can't just feel forgiven.
Yeah, and I think a lot of conversations I have with a lot of you guys is like, I want to get away, figure out my crap, and then come back, I'll know what to do. That never happens. That's never the case. So even like let yourself off the hook. Because the idea of going off by yourself to get everything figured out and then come back, I feel it's a bit of a lie that we believe. And it's when you're in community with people that it's like, okay, this is what I know about myself. They can keep you accountable. And that's where you figure out where you want to go. Because even people will tell me things I didn't know about myself. So I couldn't have gotten there without other people. So you need to be in community. Don't go off by yourself about it.
Tell someone, own where you need forgiveness, own where you need to forgive someone else. Do what you can to ask for forgiveness. Say forgiveness requires one person, reconciliation requires 2. And all of us can forgive someone we can mentally assent to that reality, but sometimes it takes a while for the heart and the soul to kind of feel it, to know it, to deal with it. But reconciliation doesn't always happen because the other person may not want to reciprocate that relationship, and that's okay. Maybe you've broken trust, maybe they've broken trust with you, but if you've just been able to process that forgiveness, I think sometimes it takes a bit of time. That's a really quick answer for a very complex question. Yeah.
Okay, what about, how can I overcome the fear of not living up to the expectations that others have of me?
Yeah, good question. I think we have to separate between good expectations and unhealthy expectations, right? Sometimes there are healthy expectations. My job has expectations for me. And I have to find a way to process those expectations, right? Like, my wife has certain expectations on me, And not that we like hold each other, like she's like, did you meet my expectations today? Like that's not what we, but there's a sense of like my kids expect me to provide for them, things like that. And I think sometimes we don't want expectations because we don't want responsibility. And sometimes expectations is just responsibility and it's just owning that, but sometimes there are unhealthy expectations. And I think you just need to have a really good sense of like, who am I and who am I not? Have I communicated that clearly? And if this is a relationship that's unhealthy, then you need to begin working yourself away from that relationship. It kind of relates to another question. Someone's like, what if I'm in a job and other people are trying really hard and they're winning and I'm trying really hard and I'm not? Maybe you're actually in a position where you're expecting from yourself something you cannot give. And that sounds bad, but part of this process of learning who you are is actually learning who you're not. And sometimes those negative expectations can let you know who you're not, and that's actually a really healthy thing. That's a win. And so sometimes you need to back away from those places, and you need to find out, what should I expect from myself? What is something I want to do and accomplish? What's something I really want to work on? And I'm going to set up maybe 1 or 2 expectations with a trusted friend where I feel like that is healthy and that's somewhat achievable and growth. I don't know, would you add anything to it? Like, I'm just off the cuff here.
No, I would agree. I think in terms of expectations with other people, it's hard, but when you're either in a job, like I've heard people be like, when I'm at a job, I don't know if I'm doing a good job, or if I'm in a relationship and I'm always letting them down, or they always feel like I'm failing them. Maybe I'm just too blunt, but just ask, like, what are your expectations of me so that you know, because yours could be way higher than what they're actually expecting of you, and you're constantly stressed about it, or they're expecting things of you that you had no idea, so how could you be held responsible? So just be blunt. Be like, what are you hoping to get out of this? Because I have no idea. In any relationship context, boss, boyfriend, I don't know, girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah. How can I identify with what I'm actually feeling? Sometimes I get confused by my emotions. Yo, me too.
Every day.
Every day. I think a few things you can do, a couple practices. What you're trying to tell me is that you're trying to learn who you are. And sometimes there's certain seasons in our life where emotions are a lot more confusing. I always encourage people, write them down. Write what you think you're feeling. Just write it out. Over time, you'll actually begin to be able to healthily, like in a healthy way, recognizing what you're feeling. Maybe have someone you can share that with, get their feedback on those things. That's a really healthy thing. Now, for the guys, I'm not saying every guy, but when it comes to emotional IQ between women and men, women tend to build an emotional IQ at a faster pace than guys do. And some of you girls are like, and that's okay. Just the way that I'm not putting out a blanket statement, but often a lot of guys, their relationships are not based on sharing emotions with each other in a consistent pattern. And I find like women are a lot better at being vulnerable and communicating those things. I said this in a series before, and I'll say it again. Guys, practice being vulnerable with someone in your life you trust. It is, and I would say that actually for everybody, in your life, practice emotional vulnerability with someone. Express those things. Because if you don't, you'll hide it, you'll bottle it, and you'll explode at some point, or it will end up ruling the day in your life. Practice emotional vulnerability, whether that's on paper or with a trusted person. Yeah.
I think too, I know guys don't really like to journal, right? No one responded. Okay, so no. But I know with girls, I think there's a lot of power in journaling. Even like when you are in a really emotional state and you just journal through it, and then the next day, maybe when you've kind of got your bearings again, if you go back and reread what you wrote, you can kind of identify what those triggers were. To be like, okay, I got really out of control here, or I can talk like some sense into myself here. So the power and the habit of journaling can really reveal a lot to yourself. So if you haven't done that yet, you should do it. It's really helpful.
Studies show that basically if you actually journal your emotions, what you do is you actually allow them to flow through you. And if you allow them to flow through you, you actually get a better understanding of what emotions you're feeling. It's almost like you're actually able to see it face to face.
Yeah.
Let's kind of maybe wind it down with another question that kind of, I think, fits a lot of the questions. There's a lot of questions about depression, anxiety, how I handle it. A good question is like, how can I feel depressed when I know like the Holy Spirit is in me? I want to nail that very specifically because a lot of people feel like because I'm a Christian, I can't be depressed. And that's a huge lie, and that's dumb. You don't have to believe that. There is this, even this guy, Paul, who wrote a lot of the New Testament, there's a certain section in this book called Romans. He says, the things that I want to do, why don't I do them? And the things that I know, I don't want to do, why do I do those things? There is this kind of struggle with, I feel like Christianity is not landing somewhere. It's acquiring a new compass. We're still fully human. We still have and God made us human. That's the thing. And some of us struggle with depressive seasons. Some of us struggle with mental health issues and anxiety. That's a reality. The idea is not to move away from them. It's actually to embrace that's the reality in your life, and it is to seek some help. It's to find really good coping mechanisms for dealing with your anxiety and with your depression. It's being honest with it. The worst thing you do, if I was an enemy, what I'd want to do is isolate you and make sure you tell nobody, because that'll kill you. And the number one reason why young adults are committing suicide is because of depression and anxiety and the pressures that go around with living this life. And I'm telling you, reach out for help. We are formed in community. That's how God forms us. I heard a really good analogy this past week. You don't know what the back of your head looks like unless there's someone else involved in your life. There's a part of your life that is blind to you unless there's other people that you're in community with that can see all around you. And we need sometimes doctors, we need physicians, we need friends, we need mentors, we need parents, we need adopted parents to help us get a really good grounding on where we're at. And I would encourage you, if you find yourself moving into depressive states, there's really good resources you can go to, free resources. There's a number you can text. I just don't have them offhand. And if you need them, just email thomas.b@hopecity.ca. I'll send them to you, or just hi or info, whatever. We'll get you the info, but notice the signs, know the signs of depression, anxiety, know that you're not alone, know that you're not the only one struggling, but know that the best way to heal is to understand that you are and reach out for help. And it could be a process, it could take time, but just because you're Christian doesn't mean you don't have issues. It just means that you may look at it a bit differently and you continue to pray and believe for help. Anything you'd add to that?
I think one of the biggest things you can do when you're going through a rough season is convince yourself that it's not bad enough yet to get help. That is such a big lie. Like when you're like, no, I'm going to get over it. I'm going to work through it. I'm going to get over it. I don't need to tell anyone. Stop telling yourself that, because you don't need to prove that you're having a hard time. So you can reach out to a counselor, even just to a friend. When I've had friends come and tell me, again, we don't have all the answers, but just when someone tells me, hey, I'm having a really hard time, I don't know why, I'm like, okay, thanks for telling me. Now I can be more intentional. Again, I'm not their counselor and I can't solve it for them, but just having that conversation is huge. So don't try and convince yourself that you're just going to get over it, because that's a huge lie. So reach out for help. Same thing.
What is the biggest lesson you've learned in terms of emotion is that you have them and they're probably telling you something. So listen. Why did God create emotions we can't control? He just created you. And we have emotions. And sometimes we don't want to deal with them. That is a whole story of maybe how you're raised. Maybe it's just how you're processing wherever you're at. Like you're an emotional person. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You shouldn't remove your emotions. If someone's like, I just want to make sure that I never lust until I get married. It's not like a switch, right? It's just like, I will never get a boner until I'm married. Right? It's like, I won't really work. I will never get turned on unless I found the one for me. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, that's part of like learning. Am I actually attracted to this person? Do I actually want to someday be naked with this person? Like, probably, right? So like, that's part of it. I think sometimes we just go to huge extremes. And it's like, if I'm not naked, then we can't do this, right? Or, I'm going to make sure I wear 3 layers of clothing all the time. And you are made human. That's how God made you. And it's meant to embrace it and embrace that reality, but just don't move into any extremes. And like I said, life is about finding a way to move between the extremes into a place of, I guess maybe, I wouldn't say balance. We won't ever really find real balance, but we'll find a tension, a healthy tension of learning who we are and who we're not, and how do we be in the midst of other people. And a part of that is just finding a really good community of people who you can be friends with and trust. We're actually going to be talking about that in January, is how do I actually make friends? But this idea, it's really funny. It's actually one of the greatest needs we get is how to make friends.
Yeah, it's big.
And go through that. But how do you make really great community of friends who you can live in tension with? And they can be like, yo, you're being an idiot. Or like, man, don't worry about it. Keep going, right? I wish we had more time,
Yeah,
but we
these are
probably
awesome.
should end it off.
Yeah.
What we may do is I may try to find a way that we can just kind of rapid fire some of these answers on our story, but is it just as much as we could do? I hope this was somewhat helpful and enjoyable to listen to. And yeah, guys, thanks for being here. I hope the series was helpful. We are starting a new series called Of Kings, Prophets, and Prostitutes next week. Super pumped for it. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. Yeah, we love you guys. We pray for you guys.
See you guys.